What if everything you thought you knew about the serpent in Eden was just the surface of a much deeper and more disturbing truth? Picture this: a being that didn't crawl, it shined. It didn't just speak, it seduced with words. In the heart of the Garden of Eden, what Eve encountered wasn't just a snake. It was something that challenged her very understanding of light, truth, and desire. This isn't just a tale about forbidden fruit. It's a spiritual code, hidden in humanity's beginning, that still echoes in the choices you make today. A cycle repeating itself in your thoughts, your home, your life. In this video, you're going to discover the serpent's true identity. You'll see how a celestial being fell and sparked an invisible war that hasn't stopped since. And, most astonishing of all, how it all points to a forgotten promise, a way out, a redemption. Sounds intense? Maybe. But what you're about to uncover might change the way you see good, evil, and yourself. Take a deep breath. Because this revelation could shift your entire perspective on the spiritual world. What if I told you that the figure many imagine as a simple slithering reptile was actually something far more powerful and dangerous? The scene in the Garden of Eden was never just about fruit and a conversation with an animal. What stood before Eve wasn't just a snake, it was a being with intelligence, charm, and a glow that mesmerized. Nahash, in the original Hebrew, doesn't only mean serpent. There's something much deeper behind that name. Few people realize that this term also carries the idea of brightness, enchantment. Picture this: a radiant being, speaking like a sage, planting subtle doubts in the heart. That changes everything, doesn't it? We're not dealing with a creature of the field, but something, or someone, who had a carefully crafted plan. A plan to flip the order of the Garden of Eden and sow separation between creator and creation. Now think with me. Why would Eve stop to have a chat with a snake? A regular snake? That doesn't make sense. But if what stood there was a beautiful magnetic being that seemed to hold forbidden, eye-opening knowledge, well, that's a different story. Who hasn't been drawn to something they knew was risky, but felt so convincing? That's where deception truly begins, when evil wears the garments of light. And this isn't just about biblical interpretation. This speaks directly to your life. How many times have you heard a subtle voice in your mind that didn't seem wrong? Just a little off track? Evil doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. Even more, it shows up as truth, as a solution, as light. Just like that snake in the Garden of Eden. And we, distracted, don't even realize how we're being led off the cliff. But hold on. In a moment, I'm going to show you something few people know about this being's true identity. First, it's important to understand that the story in Genesis 3 is both symbolic and literal. It's like a layered revelation. What's written is just the surface. Beneath it, there are deep spiritual codes about discernment, temptation, and purpose. And here's where things start getting serious. When you read this story as a children's tale, you miss the power it holds. But when you realize that the snake represents a fallen being, a rebellious angel, possibly Lucifer in disguise, it all takes on a new weight. The battle wasn't between woman and animal, but between light and darkness, between divine promise and cosmic rebellion. The Garden of Eden was the stage for humanity's first great spiritual confrontation. Have you ever thought that many of today's temptations follow the same pattern? They come dressed in good intentions, pretty words, legit desires, but deep down, they aim to sever your connection with the divine. The snake's strategy hasn't changed. Twist the truth just enough to serve a lie. And the Garden of Eden, in that sense, repeats itself every day inside your mind and your choices. So if you've fallen into traps that seemed harmless at first, know this: you're not alone. This has been part of the spiritual battle since the beginning. But here's a piece of advice from a mentor. Practice silence. Meditate on Scripture. Question the inner voices. Not every revelation comes from the light, and not every light is true. Some shine only to blind. There are modern Nahashs, disguised as wisdom and spirituality. And if this touched your heart or opened your eyes, consider subscribing. We walk this path together, toward the truth that sets us free. The goal isn't to scare you, but to awaken you. Because the more you understand about that snake in the Garden of Eden, the more you'll spot the serpents around you today. In relationships, habits, quiet thoughts no one else sees. But it's not over yet. What comes next might be the missing piece of your understanding. Because if the serpent was more than it seemed, what about its origin? Where did it come from? And why was it so cunning? In the next chapter, we'll dive into the glow before the fall, and discover how such a beautiful being became the greatest enemy of the light. What if I told you that the most dangerous lie ever told came wrapped in beauty and brilliance? Picture this. In the Garden of Eden, Eve isn't just facing a creature. She's being enchanted by a presence so radiant it could be mistaken for divine. That's the deeper meaning behind Nahash. It doesn't just mean snake, it also means shining one. And that's where deception becomes an art form. Imagine a being that once stood in the presence of God, adorned in jewels, shining like morning light. Now imagine that same being using its glow to mislead, to confuse, to twist truth into a weapon. The snake in the Garden of Eden didn't hiss. It persuaded, it reasoned, it whispered doubts in the tone of wisdom. And Eve, like many of us, listened, drawn not by fear but by fascination. Sometimes, what deceives us most isn't what looks evil, it's what looks good. That promotion you prayed for, but that pulls you away from your purpose. That relationship that feels right, but slowly dims your inner light. Just like the snake, deception often comes cloaked in everything we desire. And just like in Eden, it starts small. A question, a suggestion, a whisper in the dark. Let's get real. How often do we mistake charisma for character? The snake had beauty, eloquence, influence, but no truth. That's the trick of spiritual warfare. It's rarely obvious. That's why discernment is a daily discipline. Through prayer, fasting, and study, you sharpen your senses to spot the difference between divine light and deceptive glow. But hold up. What I'm about to tell you might shake what you thought you knew about Lucifer. Before the fall, he wasn't a monster. He was majestic. Ezekiel 28 describes him as full of wisdom, perfect in beauty. That glow in the Garden of Eden wasn't just for show. It was a remnant of what he used to be. And that's what makes the deception so lethal. The snake knew exactly how to play the game. Not by force, but by allure. Not by command, but by influence. That's the same playbook used today. Temptation rarely screams. It seduces. And if we're not grounded, we'll fall the same way Eve did, with our eyes wide open, but our spirits asleep. That's why spiritual wakefulness is no longer optional. Let's pause for a moment. Are there areas in your life today where something shiny is pulling your focus? Maybe it's a job, a relationship, even a spiritual path that feels right, but deep down, you sense a drift. The Garden of Eden wasn't just a place, it's a symbol, a mirror. We all have our gardens, and we all face the same shining snake. This is why it's crucial to develop spiritual habits that anchor your soul. Reading Proverbs daily, journaling after prayer, surrounding yourself with mentors. These are your safeguards. Because even the brightest light can cast dangerous shadows. And when you know how the enemy disguises himself, you can stop being surprised when temptation shows up glowing. So the next time something seems too perfect, too smooth, too easy, pause. Ask the hard questions. Seek spiritual confirmation, not just emotional comfort. Because the same snake who shone in the Garden of Eden still roams today, selling fake light to souls hungry for the real thing, and we're just getting started. The next chapter will take you deeper into the fall, not just of Lucifer, but of humanity's awareness. If the light could deceive, what happens when it decides to rebel? Ever wondered how a being once called Morning Star ended up crawling as a snake in the Garden of Eden? That shift wasn't random. It was rebellion. Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28 give us a behind-the-scenes glimpse into Lucifer's downfall. He wanted more than glory. He wanted God's throne, and when pride took over, heaven could no longer hold him. Lucifer wasn't cast down for weakness. He fell because he believed he could be higher than the Most High. Think about that. A radiant being, full of wisdom, trading eternal presence for ego. His fall wasn't just personal, it was cosmic treason, and once expelled, he didn't give up. He shifted strategy. The battlefield moved to the Garden of Eden. Humanity became the new target. This changes the whole narrative. The snake wasn't just trying to get Eve to eat fruit. He was sabotaging creation, corrupting the image of God in man. The moment Eve took the bait, something broke. Not just rules, relationship. And that's always been Lucifer's aim. Not destruction by force, but separation by deception. Subtle, smart, surgical. Here's the real talk. Pride still causes falls today. When we think we know better than divine wisdom, we repeat the same mistake. Maybe you felt it. That pull to control, to elevate yourself, to outshine others. That voice whispering, you deserve more. It's the same playbook, the same snake, and the same garden, now inside your heart. Let me share something personal. There are moments in life when success whispers louder than silence, when applause feels holier than purpose. That's where the snake waits, not in failure, but in ego's blind spot. That's why humility isn't weakness, it's armor. It's what keeps you from becoming your own downfall. We see it everywhere, in leaders who rise too fast, in artists who forget their message, in believers who trade truth for attention. It starts with a thought, just like in Eden. Did God really say? The moment doubt is dressed as curiosity, the trap is set. And when we forget the consequences, we repeat the rebellion. But hang on, I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this to wake you. Because once you recognize the pattern, you can break it. You can guard your mind like the sacred garden it is. You can silence the serpent before it speaks. And every time you do, you reclaim ground that was lost. Since Eden, here's a habit that helps. Every morning ask, what's driving me today? Purpose or pride? Journal it. Pray over it. Invite accountability. Because the fall didn't begin with an act, it began with a thought. A single thought that said, I can be more than what I was created to be. And if this message is resonating with something deep inside you, consider subscribing. This isn't just content. It's a journey of returning to truth. One step, one insight at a time. You're not alone in this. The same light that exposed the snake in Eden still shines today, leading you home. Still with me? Good. Because what comes next might change the way you see the whole story. If Eden was the first battlefield, what if the war never ended? Let's talk about the cosmic battle that still rages beneath everything you know. What if I told you the story of Eden wasn't just ancient history? It's a mirror of the war raging around you right now. The Garden of Eden was the opening scene of a battle far beyond trees and temptation. It was spiritual warfare disguised as a conversation. The snake wasn't there for dialogue. He was a soldier of rebellion, camouflaged as counsel. Think of it like this. Eden was heaven's embassy on earth, a sacred space of union. When the serpent slithered in, it wasn't just a breach of boundaries. It was an act of war. Lucifer was cast out of heaven, but not out of the game. The moment he appeared in the garden, the cosmic chessboard was reset. Humanity became the contested piece. We often reduce this narrative to a bite of fruit, but it was so much more. It was about authority, dominion, allegiance. Who would humanity listen to? The creator who walked with them? Or the snake who offered a shortcut to godhood? That's the same battle playing out today in every decision you make. Every temptation is a vote, a side chosen. And here's the twist. The serpent didn't use force. He used suggestion. That's how most spiritual battles are won or lost. Not by violence, but by influence. The battlefield is your mind, your desires, your doubts. And when you begin to see temptation as warfare, you stop underestimating the stakes. You start arming your soul. Let's bring it closer to home. Ever felt like you were being pulled in two directions? That's not just confusion, it's warfare. The snake still whispers today, but now through culture, screens, and even our own logic. That's why discernment is more vital than ever. The same serpent that slithered in Eden doesn't need a tree anymore. He uses trends. So what's the weapon against all this? Clarity, conviction, connection. Start by anchoring yourself in truth, through scripture, community, and time in stillness. That still, small voice of God, it's still speaking, but it competes with 1,000 noisy serpents. You've got to choose who gets your attention. But stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you might flip your understanding. The reason the serpent targeted Eve wasn't just about her. It was about lineage, legacy, prophecy. That encounter in the Garden of Eden was the start of a war that would echo through generations, leading to a promise whispered in Genesis 3:15. This wasn't just about one woman's mistake. It was about the birth of a spiritual resistance, the first prophetic word of a savior. And that promise became the devil's greatest threat. That's why he fights so hard. Not just to tempt, but to prevent the fulfillment of that ancient prophecy. So when you feel overwhelmed, outnumbered, or under attack, remember, you're part of a story that began long before you were born. You're not weak, you're strategic. The enemy wouldn't target you if you weren't dangerous to darkness. The Garden of Eden was a battlefield then, and it still is now. And we're not done yet. What comes next is one of the most powerful mysteries hidden in plain sight. A divine promise that pointed to a future redemption, long before the cross ever stood on Calvary. Imagine hearing the first whisper of redemption right in the middle of humanity's fall. That's what happens in Genesis 3:15, a verse many read quickly, but that holds the seed of everything to come. Right after the snake poisons trust. In the Garden of Eden, God doesn't just judge, he promises. He speaks of a woman's offspring who will crush the serpent's head. That's not just a prophecy, that's war declared. Theologians call this the proto-evangelium, the first gospel. And it's wild to think that while Adam and Eve are still processing their shame, God is already declaring victory. This is divine mercy at its rawest, a holy rescue plan activated before the dust even settles in the Garden of Eden. The snake thought he had won, but heaven had just begun to fight. Now pause and take this in. Every story of redemption, every miracle, every act of grace, it all traces back to this single verse. That means your story too. Your pain, your restoration. It's all part of that ancient promise. The snake bruises heels, yes. He causes wounds, stumbles, regrets. But his head, his authority, was always destined to be crushed. Let me ask you something personal. Do you ever feel like your failures have the final word? Like you've gone too far to turn back? That's the voice of the snake still trying to hiss in your ears. But Genesis 3:15 speaks louder. Your story is not over. You may be bruised, but you're not broken. There is redemption coded into your design. And this isn't just theory. This is practice. Take time this week to write down every lie you've believed about your worth. Then beside each one, write Genesis 3:15. Declare it. Pray it. This is how you begin to reclaim spiritual territory. Remember, the Garden of Eden wasn't just lost, it was promised to be restored. Here's the beauty. God didn't wait for us to seek him. He came looking. Where are you? He asked. Adam, not because he didn't know, but because he wanted Adam to know he was still seen, still pursued. That same love echoes today. Even when shame makes you hide, grace always comes looking. And that promised offspring, it wasn't just a poetic symbol. It was a specific lineage, a sacred thread that would stretch from Eve to Mary, from Genesis to Bethlehem. The snake tried to cut it off over and over, through Pharaoh, through Herod, through religious systems, but the promise endured. If you've ever questioned your purpose, know this. The enemy doesn't fight what doesn't threaten him. Your existence, your voice, your healing, they all threaten the darkness. That's why you've been attacked, but it's also why you're protected. The same God who made the promise still keeps it. So maybe today is the day to stop agreeing with the snake, to stop repeating lies that sound spiritual but breed shame, and start aligning with the word that declared victory before the war even began. You are not just surviving, you are fulfilling prophecy. one healed step at a time. And the story doesn't end here. What if I told you that the crushing of the serpent's head already happened, but in the most unexpected way? Stay with me. The next chapter might shift everything you thought you knew about the cross. What if the greatest victory in history looked, aos olos humanos, like total defeat? On the cross, Jesus didn't just suffer. He triumphed. In that moment of agony, the prophecy from Genesis 3:15 was fulfilled. The snake's head was crushed, not with a sword, but with surrender. Not through power, but through sacrifice. And that flipped the entire game. In Eden, the snake whispered doubt and brought death. On Calvary, Christ spoke truth and brought life. The Garden of Eden was where humanity lost its way. But the cross, that was the new tree, the place where the curse was reversed. The venom the serpent injected into the soul of man, Christ absorbed it and rose above it. You see, the serpent always relied on illusion. Make people believe they're too broken, too late, too lost. But Jesus proved that even death couldn't hold those who belonged to truth. His resurrection wasn't just a comeback, it was a cosmic statement. Darkness doesn't get the last word, ever. So let me ask you, what lies have tried to wrap themselves around your mind lately? What shame or fear has slithered in like a modern snake trying to steal your identity? The cross answers every accusation, every guilt trip, every whisper of unworthiness. It stands as the eternal, "It is finished." Here's something powerful to do this week. Take communion privately. Just you and the presence. As you break the bread, remember, you're reenacting victory. You're participating in Eden's reversal. Every drop of blood was a blow to the snake's agenda. And every time you remember that, you reclaim your authority. And don't forget, resurrection isn't just an event. It's a lifestyle. It means getting back up every time life tries to knock you down. It means forgiving when bitterness begs to stay. It means choosing faith when everything screams fear. That's how Christ's victory lives through you. The snake wanted dominion, but Jesus restored it to us. He didn't just save souls, he restored sons and daughters to their rightful position. That's why spiritual identity is non-negotiable. You are not what you've done. You are what was done for you. And that truth, it slays serpents every single time. And here's the beauty. The cross was just the beginning. The Spirit now dwells in you, divine power breathing through human frames. That means you don't fight the serpent alone. You fight from victory, not for it. The same Spirit that raised Christ now empowers you to trample on modern-day snakes. If this lit something inside you, a sense of purpose, of holy defiance, consider subscribing. You're part of a movement bigger than religion. It's restoration, reconnection, resurrection in motion. We walk together, led by the one who crushed the serpent without ever lifting a weapon. And hold tight, because if the cross was the turning point, what comes next will blow your mind. The story doesn't end in death or even resurrection. It ends in full restoration. A new Eden, a new earth. Let's go deeper. What if everything lost in Eden is destined to be restored? Not symbolically, but literally. Revelation doesn't just end with judgment. It ends with a garden, a city, a new heaven, and a new earth. Full circle. The same God who walked with man in the Garden of Eden promises to walk with us again. No more tears, no more snakes, just presence. It's not a fantasy, it's a blueprint. God has always been about restoration. Not just saving souls, but renewing all things. The snake disrupted paradise, but he won't have the final word. Heaven isn't the escape plan, it's the completion. And that changes how we live today. Because if eternity is real, then every small act of faith matters now. Let's get practical. How do you live like Eden is coming back? Forgive more quickly, love more deeply. Steward the earth, your relationships, your gifts, like they're holy ground, because they are. Every moment of kindness, every sacrifice, every yes to God's whisper is a seed planted in the soil of the world to come. I know. Life doesn't always feel like restoration. Sometimes it feels like ruins. You may look around and see brokenness, confusion, shadows. But that's exactly why this promise matters. God's not asking you to ignore reality. He's asking you to believe in a deeper one, the unseen, the not yet, the promised restoration of all things lost since the Garden of Eden. Let me speak directly to your spirit. The pain you've walked through, the nights you cried alone, they were not wasted. In the kingdom, nothing is. All of it. Yes, all will be redeemed. The enemy may have bruised your heel, but God is writing an ending where you stand in glory, barefoot, in a garden remade. The Bible begins in a garden and ends in a city, but with a river, trees, and fruit again. It's Eden upgraded, civilization aligned with heaven, and you, my friend, are part of that design. That's why the snake fights so hard to convince you otherwise. If you forget your destiny, you forfeit your authority. So live like a citizen of what's coming. Let hope be your protest against despair. Let holiness be your rebellion against corruption. Let worship be your battle cry when the world screams chaos. Because the day is coming when the garden will return, not behind gates, but inside and all around you. Need a habit to hold on to? Begin each morning with this declaration. I am being restored. All things are being made new. Say it until your soul believes it. And then live like it's true. Because it is. The same hands that formed Eden are forming you. Day by day, glory to glory, and when it gets hard to believe, when the snake's lies feel louder than the truth, come back to the Word. Come back to community. Come back to presence. You were never meant to restore yourself. Restoration is a gift, not a task, and it's already unfolding. So here's the final question. Are you ready to walk in the garden again? To live like heaven is touching earth through you? Because the invitation still stands. The way back is open. And this time, the snake won't get the last word. So now that you've walked through the Garden of Eden, trace the glow of the snake, and followed the thread from deception to redemption. The question remains, what will you do with what you've just uncovered? This isn't just ancient history. It's your story too. The same battle still plays out in your daily decisions. The same whispers still echo in your thoughts. But now, you're awake. Now, you know the signs. And that changes everything. Let this not be just another video you watch and forget. Let it be a call to live with spiritual eyes open, to guard the garden of your heart, to walk in the authority of the one who crushed the serpent's head and gave you the power to do the same. So tell me, which part of this journey hit you the hardest? Where do you see the serpent's tactics? In your own life, what truth from today will you carry with you? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and I walk this journey with you. And hey, if something stirred in your soul, if you felt a shift inside, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're not stopping here. This is just the beginning. The garden is being restored, and you're part of it.